I'll try to keep my voice down. My daughter's sleeping in the bedroom upstairs. We put her son, my grandson, into the ground just now. We buried Luke in the family plot in the cool shade of the apple orchard by the barn. He's got good company. The Taliban killed his daddy, my son John, in Afghanistan when a grenade launcher brought down his Black Hawk. That was a year ago. It would have destroyed John to know his boy is dead, especially the way Luke died. Lots of company in heaven to comfort Luke. His grandparents, great-grandparents, great-grandparents. This farm has belonged to the family since 1858, 2 years before the Civil War. Luke was proud of our farm's history. He planned to run this place for me after graduation. That's why I double majored in agriculture and business. Also there in the family plot rests my sister Rose. Maybe Luke is introducing himself right now. She was 7 and playing up on the hayloft. She tried to catch her puppy that was about to roll out of the loft. She saved the pup, but lost her balance and went over the side herself. My daddy was below with a pitchfork in his hands, mucking out the stall. He heard a crack loud as a car crash. It was Rose's head hitting the concrete. My mama and father never got over Rose's death. Now I guess I'm to know what something like that feels like. A man doesn't expect to outlive his son and grandson. You know what I mean? Oh, shoot. I can hear my daughter walking around upstairs. I got a loud voice, and that's a blessing and a curse. I used to be the umpire at Luke's Little League baseball games. One time he hit the ball way out of the park down the left field line. It got me so excited that I said home run, but jerked my hands up to signal foul ball. Well, Luke and the catcher are both looking at me. Which is it, Luke yelled, fair or foul? Well, Luke, I said, you heard me say home run, but all those folks in the stands saw me call it foul. I guess it's just not your day. Oh, he was mad, I tell you, but at least I made the catcher happy. One time, he's in the utility room and takes this bat and says, look at my batting stance, Grandpa. He holds it high like this, and bam, out goes a light. I said, what did you do? And he said, I just showed you my stance like this. Bam, there goes the other light, and I'm out in the dark, sloshing pieces of glass in my cup. He was worried that I might be mad, but I laughed so hard my stomach cramped up. His mother brought him into the world right here in this room. His mom is old school and had a midwife deliver him. She wrapped him in a blanket that she made herself. Darn near took the whole 9 months to finish it, her working 2 jobs and all. She put in every stitch with love. You're probably wondering who I'm blaming for Luke's death. His fraternity buds, the school, the administration. Fact is, I blame myself. Wish I could return Luke to his mama's womb and start all over again from birth. I tried to prepare him in every way for college. Bought his books from the bookstore as soon as his profs posted them. Even the really stinking sociology text that Professor Boggs wrote himself and made the kids buy for $179. That robber should have worn a mask to class the first day. That's what Luke said. Luke about went up the wall when Boggs tried to sell his Soc students another of his self-published textbooks halfway through the semester. The next thing I want to tell you is hard to say. My daughter gave me a job today. She wants me to pick out a headstone and put something on it beside Luke's name. What can I put down there? He never screwed up but once and it killed him. He had all the freaking potential in the world, but look where it got him. I don't know. Do I sound bitter? One day I'm reading a postcard from Luke asking if I could deposit money in his bank account for his fraternity chapter dues. Next day I have to pick out a casket. 1995 to 2013. Well, that much I got down. Jeez. What could Luke and little Rose be talking about now in heaven? I'm thinking of them up there, but I can't bring myself to pray. Even back in church, I couldn't bring myself to pray. I had to be strong for my daughter sitting beside me there in the pew. I tried to concentrate on the flowers, but it was hard, I tell you. Listening to his buddies from high school come up one at a time. I love the story one told about how Luke and his friends once tried to build a boat. They worked in my shop up in the barn and used my power saw and tools. Came the big day to christen the boat out at the lake. Luke bought a can of energy drink and crushed it against the side of the boat to christen it. They pushed off. Bloop. That dang boat sunk like a rock. Funniest thing was they had furnished the boat with stuff from the house and barn. Lanterns, a cook stove, kitchen utensils. All gone. And they hadn't even asked my permission before taking everything. Oh, I pretended to be mad. I thought it was a good lesson for Luke and his friends. Ask before you take something. The preacher told everyone that God asked us to do hard things. I wanted to scream from my pew, where was God the night Luke died? But that wouldn't have been right. I'm even ashamed to tell you I thought that. I'm sorry, Lord. I know Luke is with you in the Spirit. It's not for me to question your purpose. I'd like to think Luke might have learned a lesson from his last night on earth. That is, if he had lived. How alcohol is essentially a poison if you slug down enough of it. What did his roommate try to tell me at the funeral home? That he and the other pledge brothers had to chug 12 liquor bottles placed at 12 stations in honor of their 12 founders? What frickin' Einstein brother came up with that screwball plan? I can't believe not one brother said, hey guys, this isn't such a great idea. The roommate tells me 2 other pledges went to the hospital that night. They had their stomachs pumped in emergency. They were lucky. Bet they and the others have learned a lesson now. Too bad it comes at Luke's expense. I recall that Luke went off to school last August and said he wanted to rush a fraternity. His mother asked me if I thought he might have to go through hazing. Nah, I said, that stuff happens in the military. Boy, do I know different now. This one professor's research says there have been at least 1 death a year and sometimes many more deaths for well over 3 decades in our colleges. I should have researched this back when my daughter asked me that question, not answered her so quickly. The research says that 80% of the hazing deaths involve drinking. The others die of beatings, drownings, and road accidents on scavenger hunts. Yeah, crazy, right? And it's not just fraternities. It's sororities, band, and sport teams. Even high school kids haze. These kids get in a group and they can't think straight anymore. You send your kid off to someplace you think is safe, and then you bury him a few months later in the family plot. What's it say here? Hazing rights to the end take precedence over human rights. They got that right. You see this stuff in Luke's room? My daughter wants to leave the room as it always was. I don't know about that. It's kind of painful to see everything as he left it. My daughter and I don't want to pick up his stuff from the fraternity room. Just pack it all up and ship it to me, I said to that fraternity advisor over at Luke's wake. Advisor? What advice did he ever give Luke that did him any good? One of the pledge brothers brought back Luke's black lab tramp. Just walked with him on a leash right into the funeral home. Oh, that dog can't stay, the funeral director said. Oh, yes, he can, I said. I walked Tramp over to the casket, let him put his paws up and lick Luke's hands. The dog began to tremble, and then he just let out one long, sorrowful sigh and lay down. All that evening he stayed there. He only wagged his tail a little slowly when the boys from the fraternity house knelt to pet him. Luke had talked me into letting me take the dog to the fraternity house. Luke said Tramp used to sleep in a different guy's room every night. It was as if the old dog didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings. When Luke was a boy, he asked me for this pup. He and Tramp ran wild sun up to sun down. At night, those two rascals always cuddled up. One night, we drove on screaming tires to the vet. Tramp and Luke ran into a rare timber rattler right here in our woods. The vet wanted to put the dog down, but Luke begged for the dog's life. The vet handed Luke a white gown, and by sundown, they made sure Tramp pulled through. I remember when I bought Luke these weights. One day I said to him, "How much can you lift?" Quick as a button, he winked and said, 10 pounds more than you, Grandpa. He was the most competitive kid I know. If I did 100 sit-ups, he'd do 101. If I did 10 pull-ups, he'd do 20. Competitive. Yes, he was. Maybe too competitive? He was trying to show those guys how much he wanted to belong. If he was going to drink with them, he was going to outdrink them. The coroner said he'd never examined any body with so much alcohol in the blood. Luke literally drowned in whiskey and rum. Being able to drink was the litmus test of manhood with that bunch. All his friends from that house came to the funeral. Truth to tell, it was their necks, not their hands, I wanted to shake. But I saw the wetness in their eyes and knew they were grieving because they made a grave mistake. Some of them may be adults under the law, but to me, they're just kids. Luke wasn't a drinker. If Luke had been a serious drinker, he'd still be alive. Just had no tolerance for it. The only thing I keep in the house is brandy, and that's as a flu remedy. I saw too many guys in the service drink away their careers. Maybe if I'd talked to him about alcohol a little more, maybe shared my view, maybe taught him how a real man stops at 1 or 2 drinks, maybe he'd still be here. Don't go there. Driving myself crazy I am. I know it's crazy, but I think I have to slip these on. Maybe walk a bit in Luke's shoes, so to speak. He had big feet like mine. Inherited them from me. Size 14s, double E. Big as the SS Minnow. Luke was always crazy about the Boston Red Sox. But when he was in the 4th grade, someone told him about the rivalry with New York. He made his mother buy him a Red Sox cap and a Yankees t-shirt. Who are you for when those two teams play, I asked him. Whoever's winning, he said. I picked this ball cap up at the emergency room. His mother got the call about 5 in the morning. She works days, and that call was in the middle of the night for her. I was up, of course, sipping coffee in the kitchen. That's life on the farm. Cows to milk, hogs to feed, chickens need grain. And there's always something to fix. I never could afford to buy new equipment, so there always is a tractor valve needing replacement or a milking machine breaking down. Fact is, for the longest time, I didn't know how we were going to afford to send Luke to school. His grades were good, and the school helped him out with a tuition loan, but I had to take a second mortgage out on the farm for the rest. Luke and his mother never knew that, of course. They never would have let me do that for him. So my daughter comes into the kitchen. It looked like a gong was vibrating in her head. Her face had a twisted look as if her flesh no longer was part of her. Luke's in trouble. We got to go, she said. What do you mean he's in trouble? I snapped back. The hospital called and said he's on life support. She just tenses up like Tramp did at the funeral home and gives out this odd sound, something between a whoosh and a scream. I never want to hear a sound like that again. Oh, did she pray? Take my life this minute, Lord. Only make Luke all right, she cried. I called a neighbor to take care of my animals, and then I drove us 80 miles an hour to the emergency. A sheriff's deputy stopped us, and he gave us an escort to the hospital. The nurse lets us in. There's Luke on a gurney. The doctor says Luke's had 2 heart attacks. We go over to him, and suddenly he starts to move. It's as if he heard our voices and is trying to sit up. He's getting better, my daughter says. He's recovering. I can see it. Thank God. Luke, my baby. The doctor takes her hand. I wonder how many mothers' hands he's held like that. No. He's not getting any better. He'll never get better. My daughter crumbled to the floor. All her hope went out of her. I looked that doc straight in the eye. You saying our Luke is a vegetable? I'm saying he's in a vegetative state, the doctor says to me. We can keep him like this a few more hours if you have the right insurance. But I'm telling you, the time will come when you have to let us turn these machines and let him go. So that's what we did. My daughter kissed him for the last time. We told him we loved him. Not long after I addressed the doctor. Is he gone? I said. He's gone. That's when I noticed Luke had some kind of writing on his legs. What's that? I asked the doctor. The kids are always scrawling on each other with markers when someone passes out like this. We see it all the time. That's what he told me. My daughter lifted the pajama gown and saw the crude and rude words written there. Didn't they like him? She said. Didn't they even like him? I tried to tell her they were kids being kids, but she wasn't going to have any of it. Luke would have never done that to them, would he? She said. Now that Luke is gone, I have to figure out how to pay for the hospital stay and the funeral. I buried him myself, not to save money, but that's the way my family takes care of its own. Then there's the doctor bill for my daughter so she could be sedated enough to attend the wake and funeral. We're talking thousands of dollars I don't have. I may have to sell off some of the farm equipment. I've been to several auctions where my neighbors had to sell what they had to make ends meet. Now it looks as if an auction will happen to me. Luke always loved his coins. Every time he got changed, he looked at the date to see if he had a special coin. One day he and his mom went shopping when he was 5, and he asked if she could give him some pennies. And he takes them and throws them as far as he can. What'd you do that for, she says. Well, Mom, someone has to put down lucky pennies for people to find. Would you look at this? I can't believe Luke kept this old fishing rod. I used to take him once a week to our farm pond. I keep it stocked with bluegill, catfish, and bass. I took him from the age of 2 until suddenly at 14, he didn't want to go anymore. I thought it was a phase and tried to urge him to go out with me. No, Grandpa, he said, I'm through tricking fish into committing suicide. Luke thought he was disappointing me, but I was proud of him. He showed me he could think for himself. Why didn't you think for yourself your last night on earth, Luke? Luke's journal. I bought it for his 16th birthday. Here's an entry from a couple months ago. I get so sad reading about all those stars like Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse, and Heath Ledger who died before their time. That is never going to happen to me. Nope. Nope. Luke! That boy was always collecting quotations. You may never know what results come from your action, but if you do nothing, there will be no result. Mahatma Gandhi. All that is necessary for the triumph of evil is that good men do nothing. Edmund Burke. How wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Anne Frank. I don't know. Maybe there is something to those quotes. I should go back to the house and talk to those fraternity brothers. They have to live with what they did for the rest of their lives. That can't be easy. One of the kids at the funeral said everyone on campus referred to them as killers. Plus, the newspaper says there may be charges against the guys who furnished the pledges with alcohol. Luke wouldn't have wanted that. No, Luke wouldn't have wanted that at all, to see his friends in jail. Here are some more quotes Luke put down from the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. We must develop and maintain the capacity to forgive. He who is devoid of the power to forgive is devoid of the power to love. There is some good in the worst of us and some evil in the best of us. When we discover this, we are less prone to hate our enemies. Take the first step in faith. You don't have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. Just take the first step. Maybe I can talk to the boys, then talk to the police about making a deal to keep them out of jail. Or if they must serve some hard time, maybe I can help them come back and find their lives again. The law may hold them accountable. The school and national fraternity may yank the chapter's charter. Luke said the reason he wanted to join the Greek group was that the guys were so involved in community service. He sent me a picture of some fundraiser they were doing with a sorority. It looked like they were having a lot of fun. Yeah. Maybe I will go back. The school said something about holding a memorial service and maybe starting a scholarship in Luke's name. My daughter needs to see this journal. I can't bring Luke back. The boys can't either. But maybe she and I can help those kids do something positive to help other people and honor his name. Maybe even one or two of them will speak out and say that hazing not only brings dishonor to the human spirit, but it can break a pledge, destroy a family, disgrace a chapter forever and ever. I have to do something for my daughter, too. Her name is Susan. At the hospital, she broke down and fell on her knees, shaking her fist at the ceiling. The doctor sent her an aide who asked if Susan wanted a hug. A hug? A hug, she screamed. I watched that terrible scene. It wasn't enough those boys took my grandson. They had to take my daughter, too. Oh, I read somewhere that self-pity is the worst of the emotions. I sure can't do anything for anyone locking myself up here in Luke's room and playing with memories. You'd think I'd break down here and cry, but the pain is buried too deep. Now I understand my father. He once was happy-go-lucky. After Rose's death, he never smiled. Just blamed himself for not dropping the pitchfork and catching her. Here are some of the recruiting materials the school and fraternity sent to Luke and me right before he left. Almost every other line here talks about fraternal values and principles and loving your brother but holding him accountable. I don't see a word in here about drinking yourself stupid. We must learn to live together as brothers or perish as fools. Martin Luther King Jr. again. Yeah. I think I will ask my daughter to go with me to visit the fraternity house. We can have a talk with their chapter advisor and the boys. Maybe I can help transform that bunch. Maybe make this a chance for them to show me Luke didn't make a mistake in wanting their company. Maybe I need to admit to myself that if Luke had survived that night, he might have put another pledge through that initiation and broken some other family's hearts. I don't see how it's going to help me to live the rest of my life being mad at them. If I can forgive them, maybe they can forgive themselves. I guess now they have found the hard way that if you do something risky when you haze, sooner or later, it's going to go terribly wrong. Yeah, and maybe I'll box Luke's weights up and take them to the fraternity house. Those boys I saw at the funeral home looked kind of puny. I bet I can lift 10 pounds more than any of them. Maybe I'll take Tramp along too. I'll bet those boys miss him. Yeah, I'll bet those boys miss him. And at this point, the notes for Buffalo State, this is then where the 1-hour speech comes in. And what we'll need is a technician to put a stool here, and we'll need to use my computer, which will already be connected to a projector. Ray, do you have anything, any comments? Okay. Thanks, Eve. I hope you enjoyed it. And remember, it's only a reading for now. Take care.